Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the BKB National Wool Market Report with myself and with Jacques Talliard. As always, Jacques, welcome here.
Thanks, Liam.
We caught up earlier this week with Robert Scott. I think he's one of the most knowledgeable persons in the wool industry. Started as a sheep and wool advisor, I think in Tarkastad, and then later became area manager and manager of training. So he has quite a knowledge from wool sourcing up to processing, and so we had a little chat with Robert Scott regarding all the info our growers get on the clip advisors and what to do with that info. But before we look at that interview we had with Robert, let's quickly have a look what happened in the market today. So I think we had an excellent auction. The currency held us back a little bit. I think we traded, the rand traded stronger by about 1.8% against the US dollar, but nevertheless we had an excellent auction.
Yeah, it was a medium-sized auction, 10,800 bales.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had some hiccups last week with the strike. We couldn't ship all the buyers' containers, but nevertheless we had a good week.
I think so. I think where the magic actually happened were in the 19 to 20 micron categories, especially on the little bit longer side, 60 to 80 mils. We had an excellent auction on that group. On all types, and
I think that was the fireworks of the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that 90 to 20 micron. We seen Seaguard coming in there.
Yeah.
TNU, and they were pushing each other on those microns.
Yeah.
It was nice to see it for a change, to see that hard competition on certain micron groups.
No, it were absolutely wonderful, and I think some of, or actually most of the wool of the 19 to 20 recorded increases of 4 and a little bit even higher than 4% compared to the previous auction.
Yeah. So, yeah. As soon as it starts to, well, if it was a RWS qualified clip, you can double that increase.
Yeah, definitely. Then on the finer side, we still had excellent competition on the finer side, but it eased down a little bit compared to the previous 5 or 6 or 7 auctions. So it eased a little bit, but still had a good auction. Still about 1%, 1.8 to 1% higher compared to the previous auction.
Yeah. Well, it's a running. The last 2 months that we've seen that super fines running so strong. So and we always expected the medium sides that's been left behind to pick up.
Yeah.
Not really yet. We haven't seen them. No. The gap is still there.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can see it in the beginning of this new season.
Yeah, I think so. I think if we compare to the Australian market, they gained by about 2% during this week, and we basically we followed. We started the week a little bit dearer than the Australian market, and but we normally trade about 2% dearer than the Australian market. 2 to 5% dearer. So we followed the 2% and gained that little gap just to stay on top of them.
On top of them, yeah. So yeah, we've seen yesterday where the locks came a little bit back, and there wasn't. Yeah, there was some 19s. There was a lot of 19s. So yeah, I can see that they're falling behind a bit, but like the super fines, they were running top prices the last month.
Yeah. So we kept the same trend that we had the last few auctions. Good sound wool.
1%, excellent. 1% and less VM.
Yeah.
And that's the criteria that the Aussies use, and that's the same one that they use here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's still quite a large amount of these medium, these 19 to 20 micron that we saw this week actually did great. But there's still quite a lot of 19, 20 micron wool in the market in Australia. They had quite a good growing season, so they have good quality wool specifically in that micron group that's in the market. So But at least we started to see some momentum on our side, and by the start of our new season, yeah,
It'll be nice to close off the season on this level.
on this level, it would be wonderful.
That'll be positive for the off season, and yeah, with the look, currency always will be with us, and it will be a factor.
Yeah.
So yeah, with the stronger rand, we can trade at these levels. I'll start the season anytime with these levels. Yeah.
Gladly, anytime. Then we had a few producers who did exceptionally well. E.B. Harting from Lady Grey with 4 bales AH that sold for R203.50, which is an excellent price, a 16.5 micron, 70% clean yield, and 4 bales. So a wonderful achievement for E.B. for that 4 bales of AH.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the top 10, it's not always the A Hoggets, B Hoggets, or the youngs that's getting the top 10 prices. We had Stefan O'Deer Trust for Nova with these DLs.
Yeah.
And that was 16.4 micron. That was in the top 10. There was Co-Craft from Ermelo, the same DLs, 16.3 micron.
Yeah.
So it just shows you that. Well, we always said it. Once the top lines with those microns is hot, it goes down right to the locks.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we had E.B. Harting in first and second place, and Ronald Small from Barclay East in third, fourth, and fifth, with all 3 of Hogget lines that he had in the market.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Well done to Ronald as well.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, if you look at the average prices on today's sales, James Turner, 127 rand average. That's good. Jacob Sillier, Ermelo, 140 rand. Resfontein, that's Charles Tron, 139.90. That's excellent. And then Rully Becker, 122 rand.
Yeah.
So that's high average prices that we've seen. So I think we could be happy with this, with the line that we're closing off the season.
I think so. Especially on a 140, 139 averages. That's
on the final clips, yeah.
On a final clip, I think that's a great achievement,
yeah.
and we can make some money on that.
Yeah. Charles Tron has got an 8-month clip, yeah.
Okay.
To the average 139 on an 8-month clip.
Yeah, it's good.
That's excellent, yeah.
It's good. I had a chat with Jan van der Walt, our sheep and wool advisor from Burgersdorp, and he's working E.B. Harting's merino herd, and he had this nice chat about what they're doing. So it's a RFID herd. All of the sheep are tagged with RFID tags, and on the young ewes, 2-tooth ewes, they're doing prestatietoetsen. And the ewes keep that micron that they had on the prestatietoetsen earlier in their life, and they group them together, and they are shown in that groups. So that's where these 16.1 micron groups that they were able to share, where they come from.
They've always been there.
So it's from a fleece tested, and
they've just been identified.
So I think it would be nice. Earlier we had earlier the year there were Krishna made a video regarding E.B. Harting's RFID system. So I think it would be nice maybe just to have a look while we have E.B. on the top, just to have a look at that video again, and just to see with a little bit of effort what can be done with a little bit of effort. So we'll quickly have a look at that video, and after that we'll go over to the pre-recording we had with Robert Scott and have a look at that.
My naam is Jan van der Walt van BKB. Ek werk as skaap en wol adviseur in die afgelope 24 jaar. Ek het 'n lekker ondervinding gehad by 'n kliënt in Lady Grey wat 'n groot getal merino oeye meeboer. Ek het so 3 jaar terug om my woord laat val van die RFID stelsel wat ons in plek het. Hy het die tags gekoop en die handreader en dan die XRP so saam met die stelsel, 'n minimum belegging. Eerste keer na die tags opgesit het, is al sy ooe se vagte geweeg en gemikron op die hele plaas. Daarna is die lammer se speengewig, 12 maande gewig bepaal en alles is op die stelsels ingevoer plus die lammer se statusse. Die eerste klasdag van die 200 oetjies het toe die jaar aangebreek en ek was nogal op die senuwees vir 'n man met jare se ondervinding van skaapklas en stofvreet. Die eerste paar oetjies het ingekom, die kliënt het vir my 'n pragtige rampie gebou, tags word gescan en die man gooi vir my alles wat hy lees van die ooi wat voor my staan. Vaggewig, mikrons, beengewig, eenling of tweeling, indeks vir gewig, met ander woorde sommer die kondisietelling ook. Vrees het my beet gepak, want ek het nog nooit so hard gekonsentreer om 'n kudde ooi te klasseer. Die uitkoms was egter oorweldigend vir my. Ek as skaap en wol adviseur kom my vir die eerste keer in my lewe kalibreer. Ek het naderhand gaan sit en begin lag, kon net nie meer aangaan nie. Tot die kliënt se verbasing natuurlik. Hy wou weet wat is dan in die fout. Ek vertel hom toe my hele storie. Ek kon 10 langer stapels met die mooiste kwaliteit, tot 95% akkuraat uitlas op die oog, as die skape met die laagste vagmassas, en meer as die helfte met die hoogste speengewigte. Party tot 40% laer. En ek kon die dikker, digte, baie wol, natuurlik soos baie gevoerde diere se stapels lyk, ook baie akkuraat uitlas. Van hulle was amper almal onder die speen en jaarhoudgewig van die hele trop se gemiddeld. Daar was vir die hele dag net een dunner langer stapel ooi, wat bo die vaggewig gemiddeld was. Volgende klasdag, volgens die kliënt, Ebiata, sy opinie, sal hy nie met tyd verder mors nie. En sal ons 30% uithaal, klaar op die syfers beskikbaar. Dit was vir my die beste ervaring in my loopbaan ten opsigte van skaapklas. Ewe skielik het ek weer baie belangrik gevoel en weer met absolute vertroue my taak aangepak. Daar is so baie mites in ons bedryf en elke ou beskerm sy teelers wie sy ramlammers nou al in die voerloop. Daar is wel uitsonderings, baie dankie daarvoor, want op die einde van die dag maak die kuddeboer jou sakke vol.
Ladies and gentlemen, then as promised, we had a chat, a pre-recording with Robert Scott to give us some info on all the info our clients receive via documentation that's been sent out since the clip arrives at BKB and since the account sale, since they received their last account sale. So there's a lot of info on that, documents, what to do with it, and how to improve your farming practices with all of that info. So Robert, welcome with us. Thank you for chatting with us.
Yes, Robert.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice being with you guys. And hi to all my farmer friends, wool friends.
Wonderful. Robert, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself. You've been with BKB for extremely long time, and so there's no one that knows the system better than yourself, and all these things that we're going to talk about. But maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself for those who don't know you.
Yes, I've had a wonderful career of 40 years in the wool trade, and now in the fortunate position to be on semi-retirement in the beautiful part of the country called Still Bay. It's sort of 100 kilometers from Mossel Bay towards the Cape Town side. I say semi-retired as I'm still extremely fortunate to still be involved in the trade by giving training and being at wool schools or newly appointed staff and refresher courses to my old wool colleagues. So what a privilege it is to still be involved with the trade. That's so wonderful.
Robert, we have quite a few documentation that go out to our growers since the wool's been received up until their last account sale. And I think one of the main questions we receive from our growers is the AWACS ID system that we work with. Maybe give us some insight on where does it come from, and why do we use it?
Okay, the AWACS ID is it's just a short abbreviation for the Australian Wool Exchange Identification Document. Now, AWACS was introduced in 1995, and BKB acquired the appraisal system and implemented it in the 1998-99 wool season. So why we applied this system was purely to compare apples with apples. So what's happening between ourselves and our markets in South Africa and the Australian market. Now, the main objectives for AWACS was to provide of the AWACS ID was to provide a guide for the appraiser on greasy wool, and more specific, the non-measured characteristics. And secondly, it also adequately provides for pricing functions such as market reports, daily quotations, auction premiums, discounts, and pre- and post-sale statistics. In short, it's a powerful descriptive tool that simply enhances the communication process.
Robert, yeah, I think that was the first time you were one of the first ones that had a look into it and implemented it at that stage.
Yes, that was a fun run. We implemented this AWACS ID, and then three of us went over to Australia, and we had a three-nation sort of a test, you could call it, where Barcy Klaasen and Derek Fitzhenry and myself, together with the Australians, together with the New Zealanders, and we judged wool there, and yeah, we simply came and found out that on the AWACS ID, we're all on par. So if we describe something in this country, they'll know exactly what the wool likes and vice versa. So it's really a fantastic system.
Since then, that was the first time that we actually could compare our wool in rand or in dollar terms exactly with the international market.
Yeah, as I said, for the first time we could compare apples with apples, because they had their description system and we had ours, and that has changed. I mean, the whole descriptive wool description system changed over the years, from the old British Commission days, and this is just a simple system that everybody can understand, and and we'll chat a little bit later on exactly what all goes into the AWACS ID.
Jock, you managing the basis where we're running our valuations from. How did AWACS influence the base that you managing now, where we're running our valuations from? That must have been a huge improvement.
Yeah, it made it so much easier. You've got your qualifiers that you update weekly according to the sale, if necessary, and then from there on, it's just your microgrids that you updated weekly.
Okay. Robert, if we're looking at a typical AWACS type, let's say we're looking at a MF5 or at the typical AWACS type, so specifically those style types, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What do the guys who type the wool, what do they look at to get to that specific style type, whether they type with a 3 or a 4? What characteristics do they look at?
Well, with AWACS, first of all, we got to determine the breed. If it's a merino or a crossbred or down or a carpet type, etc. So the breed is determined. Secondly, we're also going to look at the wool subcategory. Is it the lamb, or weather, etc. Then we get to the wool category. Is it fleeces, pieces, bellies, or locks? So we got to determine each one of those categories. And then the style is determined. Now the style, to explain style, is that wool has 6 physical wool properties, namely length, fineness, tensile strength, condition, or clean yield also known, and then quality and appearance. Now quality and appearance forms a style, And that style is further divided into either a spinner, best top maker, good top maker, average, and inferior top maker. And there's a number allocated. The spinner will be a 3, and a best top maker a 4, and for example, a good top maker a 5. So there's all of those allocated to it. So we'll decide, right, this is a merino fleece. It's a fleece, so it'll be an MF. And then what style is it in? Is it the best top maker? So it'll be an MF4. But then further, we've got to go and determine the seed. Not the percentage seed, but also the type of seed has got to be determined, because the type of seed plays a major role in the processing. Secondly, if it's not tested for length and strength, then we've got to determine the length, and we've got to determine the tensile strength. We can chat about tensile strength a little bit later. And then there's about 21 different qualifiers. So if that wool is unscarable, we'll give it an indication. If it stains or spots or whatever, they can be applied to give a full description of that greasy wool. So it's really a pretty foolproof classing standard.
I think in South Africa there's 2 wool bars that uses that same system on the marketing, if I'm correct now. Yeah,
I think you're correct.
Yeah, there's 2 wool bars. So if it works for the brokers, obviously you're not going to get all the buyers using it, but they're using it as well. So it was for them a successful.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you take Australia, our percentage of wool we produce against Australia and the amount of wool they produce, I mean, we simply follow the Australian market, even though our wools are better, we believe. We follow their market. And how do we follow their market if we don't describe that product that we're talking about exactly the same? So, yes, I don't know how you determine the value on a product simply in just our sale room. So you got to look at it globally. It's a global product, isn't it?
Correct.
Absolutely. Robert, you've talked about VM, about plant material in the wool, and so your typical VM percentage. Why is it important to have a look at the VM? What type of plant material that is in the wool, and do you on the valuation, the VM and the clean yield is usually next to each other. Do the two have anything in common with each other? Does if your VM is higher, does it influence your clean yield in any way?
I think you got to look at if you look at the clean yield or condition, as we also call it in the fleece. Now that's going to be determined by mainly the wool yolk and wool sweat, also otherwise known as your lanolin, and that will account for between 15 to 30%, depending on how much wool yolk and wool sweat you got in your wool. And then secondly, sand and dust, that plays a major role, between 5 to 40%. And then you get the vegetable matter. Yes, it does affect. Can be anything between 0.5% to 10%, 10% plus. And then lastly, what you must also keep in mind is that moisture, between 8 and 12%. So between that yolk and the dust and the VM and the moisture, is going to have an influence on your condition. But as I already mentioned, the type of seed, being it a burr or a shive, which is like blackjack, or your steekgras or cockles, for instance, is going to have an effect on your processing abilities of that wool. So we got to determine the type of seed that's in that lot as well, not just the percentage of VM that we get back from the laboratory.
Robert, yeah, interesting. It was the season ago. We had clients that would query their clean yields with us. And yes, if you look at the wool in the display box, it looks beautiful. It looks 5-6% higher in yield. But exactly what you said now is you get good wool seasons where the fleece actually produces more greasy, more lanolin, but that's get subtracted to get to the clean yield, and that's exactly what happened. If it looks nice, it's heavy in hand, but that to get to a clean yield, that gets washed out to get to a clean wool price here, a clean wool base.
Yes, well, you see, that's what's important. Now, the farmer and our producers, they look at the greasy wool price. In other words, what's he getting per kilogram of wool? Whereas your buyer will determine his price on the clean yield, on the clean price. So, yes, the higher your percentage clean yield, obviously the more money you're going to put in your back pocket, but the lower your yield, then the percentage the money value is going to come down. But the buyer determines on a clean wool price. So and in a good season, as you mentioned, Doc, it's that you just got higher protein levels, and which is your feeding levels are better. Then obviously you're going to have a bit more yolk in your wool, which is important to be there. But your yield is going to come down a bit. But it balances out. You go and make yourself a little calculation and say, but what have I shorn off my sheep? And the bottom line is to determine what do I make per hectare at the end of the day, not what I get per kilogram, isn't it?
Correct, yeah.
Robert, are there anything that our growers can do in their management to better their yield, or is it mainly a genetic and an environment thing, or can our growers do a few things to better their yield? And in the same question is, can the clean yield get too high? Is that possible?
I'd like to answer that question by starting at the last part of it. Namely, yes, extreme high yields is also not desirable. One must remember that the wool yolk, or lanolin as we also know it, is important to protect that fiber, that keratin, against weathering and dryness, which is caused by your dust and your sun and sand and wind, and that causes the weathering. So there's part of the question, what can the grower do? And I want to answer it like this. Clean yield is influenced by different factors, and mainly the district, the farm, the camp in which our sheep are running. So in other words, your soil types will influence the yield percentage. Yeah, sure, you can keep them out of dusty areas and your kraals and things like that, but as I said, your farm and the camps where they're running the district is going to determine the type. Secondly, the breed, or the different sheep types. Different breeds have different wool styles, caused by the staple thickness as an example. So also within a breed, differences are found. So it can be genetically, one's got to look at that. And then thirdly, your wool thickness, your fineness and your staple size. I mean, some staples are inclined to have a deeper dust penetration. So one's got to look at your staple size. So those are the factors that mainly going to influence your yield. And so you can do it genetically. You can produce a better staple wool, and you can do in your kraals and things like that. You can stop your dust. So there are practical ways to increase your yield. But as I say, also be aware not to go too high. Eh?
Okay. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, Jock, and thank you, Robert, as well, for your time. I appreciate that. Then our next auction will be on the 9th of June, and we will have about 10 to 11,000 bales on auction. And just after the auction, we will be ready with the market report. As always, have a good evening.